Hillchos Shchenim, chapter 7. Well, when a person has a window in his wall, and a caller comes and builds a courtyard next to it, the owner of the courtyard cannot tell the owner of the window, close his window so that you will not look at me. For the owner of the window has established his right to maintain the window, even though it is a source of damage. If his caller desires to build a wall opposite the window to block the invasion of his privacy, he must leave a space of 4 cubits next to the window to avoid casting a shadow upon it. 2. If the window was positioned low in the wall, the owner of the window may force the owner of the courtyard to build a wall 4 cubits away from the window and build at least 4 cubit height so the owner of the courtyard cannot look through the window but catch the owner of the window. 3. The following was applied when the window was positioned high on the wall and the owner of the courtyard built a wall below the window. If there was more than 4 cubits from the top of the wall to the window, the owner of the courtyard may not prevent the owner of the courtyard from building a wall, even though he does not leave any space between his wall and the wall in which the window was located. If the new wall is not casting a shadow over his window, nor does it invade the privacy of the owner of the window. If, however, there were fewer than 4 cubits between the top of the wall and the window, the owner of the window may force the owner of the wall to either lower the wall so that the owner of the courtyard will not be able to stand on the wall and look through the window, or he may force the owner of the courtyard to build his wall 4 cubits high, 4 cubits from the window, and build it more than 4 cubits higher than the wall. In this way, he will not cast a shadow. Normally, the owner of the courtyard will be able to look in and see him full. When the owner of the courtyard builds one wall next to the window, he must build the wall at least a handbreadth away from the window, and must build the wall at least 4 cubits higher than the window, or make the top of the wall make the wall narrow on top so that he will not sit on it and look into the window and watch his neighbor. 5. When a person builds 2 walls, one on either side of the window, there must be at least 4 cubits between them, and the window must be situated in the center of those 4 cubits. The owner of the courtyard may not place schach over the space between the walls unless he leaves a space of 4 cubits between the schach and the wall where the window is located, so that will not cast shadow over it. Accordingly, if a person comes to open a window, whether a large window or a small window, overlooking a courtyard belonging to a colleague, the colleague may prevent him from doing so, for he can tell the owner of the window, you'll be invading my privacy by looking at me. Even if the window is located high in the wall, the owner of the courtyard may protest, saying, you will climb up on the ladder and look at me. 6. If a person has opened the window overlooking a courtyard belonging to a colleague, and the owner of the courtyard waived his right to protest or displays willingness to consent, e.g. helped during the window's construction, or he knew about the source of the damage and did not protest, the owner of the window has established his right to the window. The owner of the courtyard cannot comment at a later date and protest that he must close it. What are the laws that apply with regard to this window that he was allowed to open? If it was large enough for the person to insert his head, or at least 4 cubits high, even if it is not large enough for the person to insert his head into it, the owner of the courtyard may not build a wall opposite it or outside unless he moves 4 cubits away, as explained in the previous halacha. 7. If, however, the window is too small for the head of the person to be inserted, or was more than 4 cubits high, the owner of the courtyard may build a wall opposite it on its sides. For he can claim, I allowed you to open the window only because it is small and high, but it was not my intent to give you a right that would require me to move away from my building. 1 is will apply when the window was open to be used, or to allow air to enter. If, however, the window was open so that light could enter, even if it was very small and very high, since the owner of the courtyard did not protest the time of its construction, the owner of the window was granted the right to it. The owner of the courtyard may not build a structure opposite it or outside unless he moves 4 cubits away, so that he does not cast a shadow against it, for he granted him the right to the light. Similarly, if a person had a window for which he established the right, and the owner of the courtyard built opposite it or outside without moving away, or he closed the window where the owner of the courtyard window did not protest, the owner of the window cannot come at a later time protesting and demanding the window be opened, the structure be moved, since he remains sound, he has the right to protest. For a person will not remain sound while another person blocks his light, unless he relinquishes his light. 8. When a person who has windows on the lower portion of his wall, and a person opens open and joining when a person who owns an adjoining property desires to erect a building but block them, he is not permitted to do so. Even if he proposes, I'll open up a new window for you in this wall above these others. The owner of the windows may prevent him from doing so. Explain, when you open the windows, you will shake the foundations of the wall, and even if a person who desires to build offers, I will throw down your wall and rebuild you with the windows higher up, and I will rent you a home for you to live until I build it. And the home can still prevent it from say, then I want the trouble of moving from one place to another. Therefore, if there is no difficulty involved at all, it is not necessary for him to leave his home, he cannot prevent it from performing this construction. We can help to allow his friend to close the window below and build a new window for him higher up, and how to allow this to be following the traits of his diamond. Certainly, in this situation, one person will benefit and his colleague will not lose, nor be lacking anything. We compel that person to cooperate. 9. When by contrast, the owner of the window desires to change the location of his window, whether to raise it or lower, the owner of the joint courtyard can prevent him from doing so. That's possible, even if the window was large, and his owner says, I will only open a small window in another place and close this window. The city cannot make the window larger. 10. If the following was applied when 2 brothers divide a courtyard, that they receive this inheritance of their own accord, evaluating the property, the building, and the trees in each other's portion, but failing to pay attention to the value of the open space. Thus, one received the garden of the courtyard, and one receives an etc. If the brothers who received the garden in the courtyard desire to build a wall at the end of its portion of one of the brothers, etc., may do so, even though he cast a shadow over it from when dividing the estate. They did not pay attention to the value of the open space. Hillchos Shchenim, chapter 8. 1. When a person desires to build a projection from his property, regardless of its sides, extending over the space above a courtyard belonging to his colleague may prevent him from doing so, for he will invade his privacy by looking at him when he hangs his articles on the projection or uses it in any way. If he builds the projection of the owner of the courtyard did not protest immediately, the builder of the projection establishes his right to it. 2. If the projection was a handbreadth wide, the owner of the projection has established his right to the empty space of the courtyard. If the owner of the courtyard desires to build under the projection as a result nullify its usefulness, the owner of the projection may prevent him from doing so. If the projection is not a square handbreadth, the owner of the projection does not establish his right to the empty space of the courtyard whenever the owner of the courtyard desires, he may build under the projection. As a result, nullify its usefulness. The owner of the projection may not prevent from doing so. 3. When the projection that was constructed was 1 handbreadth wide and extended out 4 handbreadths into the space of the colleague's courtyard, and the owner of the courtyard did not protest against this, the owner of the projection establishes the right to waste space 4 handbreadths by 4 handbreadths. If the owner of the projection desires, he may widen the projection total 4 handbreadths by 4 handbreadths. The owner of the courtyard may not build anything in the spaces in his courtyard below the projection unless he leaves a space of 10 handbreadths below the projection, so the owner of the projection may make use of it. 4. When a person sets up a smaller ladder that has fewer than 4 rungs in a corridor or field belonging to a colleague next to his own wall, he has not established a right to use his colleague's property in this manner. Whenever the owner of a courtyard desires, he may build next to a ladder and nullify its usefulness. If by contrast the ladder is large, possessing 4 rungs or more, the owner of the ladder establishes his right to maintain it. If the owner of the courtyard desires to build a structure that would nullify its usefulness, the owner of the ladder may prevent it from doing so unless he moves a sufficient distance away, for he granted him the right of constructing a large ladder. For this reason, if the owner of the roof comes to set up a large ladder in an adjacent corridor, the owner of the courtyard may protest in prevent him from doing so that he does not establish his right. If, however, he sets up a small ladder, the owner of the courtyard may not prevent him from doing so, for we tell him you are losing nothing from this. Whenever you desire, you may move it away. 5. The following is applied when a person desires to extend a drain pipe from his roof over a corridor belonging to a colleague so that the water will flow into his colleague's property, or he made a gutter on his wall so that the water will drain off and descend into his colleague's courtyard. The owner of the courtyard can prevent it from doing so. If the owner of the courtyard does not protest, the owner establishes his right to the drain pipe. If afterwards the owner of the pipe desires to close it, the owner of the courtyard can prevent it from doing so, for just as the owner of the roof establishes his right to have his water flow into the courtyard belonging to his colleague, the owner of the courtyard establishes his right to have the water from his colleague roof flow into his garden. If the owner of the roof desires to move the drain pipe from one corner of the roof to the other, or the drain pipe was long and desired to shorten it, the owner of the courtyard may not prevent it from doing so. For the right that he established was merely that the water flow into his property. Similarly, if the owner of the courtyard desires to build under the drain pipe, the owner of the projection may not prevent it from doing so, for the drain pipe is not made for use like objections, so that it can be said the owner of the roof has established the right to the open space of the courtyard, for a drain pipe is made only for the purpose of letting water flow through it. 6. The following is applied when a person causes water from his roof to descend into the courtyard of his colleague and establishes his right to this purpose. If water was dripping in several places and he desired to have it collect in one place and make a drain, he may. Similarly, if the water would descend in one place and the owner of the roof wanted it to flow in several different places, he may even build a slanted canopy on his roof so that the water will flow speedily into the courtyard of his colleague, for he has established the right to have water descend into the courtyard of his colleague. 7. When there is a wall between the properties of Reuben and Shimon and they share its ownership, both may use it. One may hollow out space from one side and insert his beam regardless of their size, and the other may hollow out space from the other side and insert his beams. If the wall belongs to Reuben alone, Shimon may not make use of it. If, however, Shimon hollowed out space in the wall and inserted one beam, Reuben remained silent, did not protest. He established his right to the place of that beam, even if his original beam was small, and Shimon desired to change it to a big and thick beam, he may. If the beam was part of the temporary sukkah, he does not establish his right to maintain it for 30 days. Reuben will say, I did not waive my right to protest, I allowed it merely because it was temporary. If the owner of the beam maintains the sukkah for 30 days, he establishes his right to it, for this is no longer considered temporary. Different laws apply. If he constructed a sukkah for the holiday within all 7 days of the holiday, he does not establish the right to maintain it. After the 7 days are completed, he does not establish his right. If he joins the end of the beam to the wall with mortar, he establishes his right immediately, provided he brings proof that Reuben helped him in the construction or saw and did not protest. 8. If a person establishes the right to insert one beam into the wall and does not have a right to insert a second beam. 4. The owner of the wall waives his right to protest with regard to only one beam. When does it apply? When the person inserting his beam admitted the wall did not belong to him, the owner waives his right to protest with regard to the insertion of the beam. If, however, he claimed, I am partner in this wall, since he made use of it for one beam, he would accept that he is allowed to insert all his beams. He takes Shavuos Hesed that he is partner in the entire wall. 9. One of the colleagues builds the wall with the participation of the other. Only he has the right to it. If beams belonging to Reuben were placed within the wall, and there was also space hollowed out on Shimon's side for him to place his beam, Shimon has not established the right to it. Shimon may not insert his beams into the wall, nor may he claim that he is partner in it, for he has no right to use it. Reuben can refute Shimon's claim, stating, before building the wall, I hollowed out these places on your side so that they will be prepared for you, so that when you will purchase his share from me, or when you will request me to waive my right to protest and allow you to insert your beams, you'll be able to do so without hollowing out the wall, so that the wall will not be shaken when it is hollowed out. Hillchos Shchenim, Chapter 9. 1. A person may not take a cistern, a trench, or a storage vat next to the wall belonging to a colleague unless he distances himself at least 3 handbreadths from the wall, nor may he extend an irrigation ditch or make a pool for soaking close to be landed near a wall unless he makes such a separation. He must seal the wall with this cistern water reservoir or irrigation ditch with cement on the side near his colleague, so that the water does not seep through and damage his colleague's wall. 2. A separation of 3 handbreadths must be placed between all of the debris, manure, salt, lime, or flintstones in the wall belonging to one's colleague, or these substances must be coated with cement. Similarly, a separation of 3 handbreadths must be made between a wall and plants plowing and a cesspool where urine is collected. 3. A mill must be placed at a distance from a colleague's wall. Lower must be separate from the wall by at least 3 handbreadths, causing the upper millstone to be separate at 4 handbreadths, that the millstone will not cause tremors to the wall, so that its noise will not frighten the neighbor. 4. An oven shall be separated from the wall. Separation of 3 handbreadths should be made between the wall and the space, resulting in a distance of 4 handbreadths between the wall and some portions of the wall will not become heated. 5. Separation of 4 cubits must be made between a wall belonging to a colleague and a stone by used by a launderer to beat garments until they become white, for otherwise the launderer beats the garment with the stone, the water will spray outward and damage the wall. It's probably like would be written today, halacha, about like, how loud you're allowed to make your TV. No, I'm kidding. All right. 6. A person should not urinate next to a wall belonging to a colleague unless he distances himself 3 handbreadths from it. When does it apply with regard to a brick wall, with regard to a stone wall? But conscience is necessary to distance himself by only 1 handbreadth. If the stones were marble, it will urinate on the side of the wall without making any separation. Okay. 7. A ladder should be separated from a dovecote by at least 4 cubits, so that when the ladder is placed down, a marten will not leap up and descend to the dovecote and eat the doves. 8. One should leave a space of 4 cubits between a wall and drain pipe belonging to a colleague, so that the owner of the drain pipe can set up a ladder to fix his drain pipe. Since he established his right to the drain pipe, he is given this additional privilege. 9. When a wall belonging to Reuven is joined by a wall belonging to Shimon in an L, and Reuven desires to build a second wall opposite Shimon's walls, the 3 walls will appear as a base. Shimon can prevent it from doing so, and require him to leave a space of 4 cubits between the walls, so that there will be a wide space between the walls. People can tread and strengthen the earth. When they apply with regard to a wall of a garden, with regard to a wall of a city in a new city or in an older city of a country is unnecessary, and one may build opposite wall without making any separation. Similarly, if the length of Shimon's wall opposite which Reuven was building was less than 4 cubits, Reuven may build opposite it without making separation. It really prevents people from walking the other direction. Also, that a wall is less than 4 cubits long does not have to have the earth near it strengthened. 10. When the following apply when a person comes to dig a cistern at the end of his field near the property boundary of a colleague. If the field belongs to the person's colleague is not appropriate to contain cisterns, the person may dig a cistern next to the boundary. The colleague may not protest against it. If the colleague changes his mind and decides to dig a cistern next to the cistern that was dug, he must separate himself 3 handbreadths from the wall of the cistern, so that there will be 6 handbreadths between the cavities of the 2 cisterns. If the field belonging to a person's colleague is appropriate to contain cisterns, the person may not dig a cistern next to the boundary. Instead, he must distance himself 3 handbreadths from the boundary before digging. Similarly, when a colleague comes to dig a cistern, he must also make a separation, digging the cistern 3 handbreadths within his field. 11. The following apply when the first story of a house and the second story belong to 2 separate individuals. The owner of the house should not build an oven in the first story of his house unless he leaves the space 4 cubits above it. The owner of the second story may not build an oven unless there is a ceiling 3 handbreadths thick below it. For a range 1 handbreadth sufficient. If he decides to build a baker's oven, there must be a ceiling 4 handbreadths thick below. For a range belonging to a baker, 3 handbreadths is required. Even if the person took the necessary precautions to separate the required distance, if fire emanated from the oven caused damage, he must pay the damages as explained in the source dealing with the subject 12. The following was applied when a person owns a store below a storage warehouse belonging to a colleague. In the store, you should not make a bakery, a paint factory, or for cattle, nor should he bring in hay or other substances that generate warm air, for this will damage the produce stored in the warehouse. So for this reason, if the warehouse was used to store wine, or just so that the wine is not ruined by heat, the owner may perform any task involving fire that he desires. He should not over make it a barn for cattle, for this will spoil the aroma of the wine. If the store had already been established as a barn, they probably said barn before. Okay. A bakery or the like, and afterwards the owner of the second story desired to make his loft a warehouse for produce, he may not protest against the store owner's continued use of the premises for their original purpose. 13. If the owner of the second story swept out his premises and sprinkled water on the floor, or made many windows so that he could use his premises as a warehouse, the owner of the lower story rushed and began building an oven before his colleague brought in produce to the warehouse. The owner of the second story began to store sesame seeds, pomegranates, dates, the lower story rushed and began building an oven before his colleague brought in wheat to the warehouse, or the owner of the store built a loft on top of his store to separate between the store and the warehouse. The owner of the warehouse may prevent him taking these actions if whoever the owner of the store transgressed and built an oven and the like. The owner of the warehouse does not have the power to force him to remove the oven in all these situations.